Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views. Myself, Salalo Makudiri, and we're going to be switching gears now to a very, very important point of discussion. In a politically charged and deeply contested vote, loyalists of Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas have swept municipal elections across the occupied West Bank with a limited but symbolic participation in parts of Gaza. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the vote held under occupation and amid ongoing genocide has been described as both a test of political legitimacy, number one, and number two, a reflection of shifting public sentiment in a fractured Palestinian political landscape. And that's the conversation that we're going to be having. Going to trying to understand, dissect the elections that just happened, and to help us unpack the significance of those results and what they reveal about power and just general governance and public mood on the ground. We're joined by journalist Osama Nazzal, is based out in Jenin, and he'll be giving us insight of the recent elections out in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. Osama, good morning. Salamu alaikum. Jazakallah so much for joining us. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
My pleasure.
And I think we'll jump right into it. If you can give us, just a recap of, the municipal elections that happened just 2 days ago. What would you say was the most stand out for you about these elections results, particularly what many consider a sweeping victory for Mahmoud Abbas, quote unquote loyalists, maybe, if you can put it that way.
The municipal elections were conducted under very, very complicated and difficult conditions, as Palestinians, whether in the occupied West Bank or in Gaza, are going through unprecedented living conditions due to the continuing Israeli aggression, or maybe genocide, really, as it did not stop. So the Palestinian Authority decided to conduct these elections in order to renew the legitimacy of these municipalities and local councils that have been with no election for many years due to the political and the security situation prevailing in the Palestinian territories. And what attracts attention is really the conduction of these elections in Beit Lahia in the Gaza Strip. As we know, the people in Gaza are decimated and the means of livelihood are completely cut off because of the continuing bombing by Israel and the continuing blockade of Gaza. So it shows how the Palestinian people are determined to live and to stay on their land. So we are talking about municipal elections in a country that is torn and worn by the war and by the siege. And it was not expected really to see the people in that part of Gaza going to the polling stations because of their situation. But they did it, showing the whole world that the Palestinians are not going to surrender, are not going to leave their country. They are holding on to their land. They are conducting elections in order to legitimize their governing bodies, and they deserve life. Now, concerning who won, which party won, of course, Hamas movement did not participate in these elections, but it allowed them in the Gaza Strip. And when we talk about the municipal and the local councils elections, we are not talking about political agenda or a partisan pattern, because these councils are tasked with providing services for the people in terms of water, electricity, and other basic needs. But to happen under this condition, it really shows the strong determination of the Palestinian people to hold on to their land.
Very, very important to note. And I think one aspect which, was very, very interesting and important for me is the fact that for the first time in years, I think in 20 years, there were parts of Gaza that were included. Even symbolically, how significant is that politically and on the ground to have some parts of Gaza being part of these municipal elections?
You know that the main behind the Israeli occupation siege and the Israeli continuing war against the Palestinian people is to completely separate Gaza. Israel failed to expel the people of Gaza to Egypt and to the nearby regional countries. As it failed to do that, it is trying to succeed in separating Gaza from the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory and keep the Palestinian land divided into small enclaves or small Bantustans where people can hardly live. Now, having the elections in the West Bank and in Gaza gives a signal that these two parts of Palestine are united in terms of the people and in terms of the administrative boards and in terms of the political goals that their citizens and their boards or administrative boards have. So it is a message of national unity, really. It is a message to the whole world, and first and foremost to Israel, that the Palestinian people are one people, united, struggling against the occupation and oppression hand in hand, and dividing them is a mission impossible.
Mm, Um, let's talk about the turnout. In Gaza specifically, there were reports that the turnout was very low. What does that tell us about, just the situation on the ground? Well, what can be attributed to this? Is it public trust? Is it political engagement, or just the general conditions people are living under? They are not conducive to even exercise the right to vote.
Yeah, first of all, in Gaza were conducted just in one part. It is in Beit Lahia, because
Mm,
the Israeli destruction in Beit Lahia is the least, really, as Israel destroyed about 45 to 50% of Beit Lahia. But in other parts of Gaza, like Rafah, Khan Yunis, Gaza City, we are talking about a destruction of more than 95% of the housing units and the infrastructure there. So it was impossible for the elections to be conducted in all the parts of Gaza. And it was possible to conduct them in this small part. We are talking about tens of thousands who participated in these elections out of 2.2 million Palestinians. We are talking about a fraction only due to the political and the security and the economic situation, because, as I said, it is a war torn area. So it is
mm,
difficult, really, to use the results of these elections in Gaza as an indicator into the people's attitudes and into the people's direction, as those who participated are those who are living in Beit Lahia alone, not in any other part. But the turnout rate was very low, and this is justified because of the Israeli siege, because of the absence of the sense of security, as Israel was bombing Gaza all the time, and every day Israel kills between 7, 10, 15 Palestinians in Gaza. So the bombing has not stopped, and this prevents the people from going to the polling stations, and it prevented the Palestinian Authority from conducting the elections, because it's impossible to have polling stations in the destroyed parts of Gaza. Also, the economic situation, the Israeli settlers' aggressions against the Palestinians here in the West Bank, the people's means of livelihood are getting narrower and narrower every day. All these factors together affect the people mood and the people direction towards the election.
Mm, mm, mm. The absence of Hamas, how should that be interpreted? The fact that Hamas was not part of the electoral process in the West Bank, and there was also very limited presence in the Gaza's, vote. How should we interpret that? How should the world understand it?
Yeah, really, if we talk about the nature of the municipal elections in general, and this is the first time I noticed that even here in the West Bank, the elections were not based on the political parties. Most of the electoral lists that were formed by either independent nominees, independent candidates, or it talk like the family or the tribal pattern. That was the nature of the elections here. As you know, even in the West Bank, the list formed by Fatah movement were very limited, really. And this could be considered as an indicator also to the weakness of the political parties in the Palestinian territories these days. Uh, Hamas did not participate because we know that Hamas was, you know, decimated in the Gaza Strip because Israel killed most of the leaders and the leading figures of the movement there and destroyed the infrastructure of the movement there. And at the same time, Israel is strangling Hamas in the West Bank, and it does not allow it even minimum space to move in the occupied territories. So, because of the war and because of the security situation, I think that's why it did not participate in these elections.
Mm, mm, mm. Lastly, before I let you go, your analysis or impressions of the results and the kind of picture that they paint. What would that impression be?
First of all, Palestinian people are a people who insist on their national goals, the liberation of their country, refusing the Israeli occupation in any form. They are ready to exercise the democratic process regardless of the very difficult and complicated conditions surrounding them. And this is a very important message to the world that the Palestinians will never give up their right of self-determination, their right to independence and freedom. And it shows also the Palestinian political echelon here that there should be parliamentary and presidential elections in order to have the whole democratic process complete. And the municipal elections could be considered just as an introduction to the general elections.
Well, there you have it, Brother Osama Nazzal there joining us from Jenin. Really appreciate you giving us your time and hope we chat again soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There we go. And with that, we've come to the end of today's edition of News and Views. I'll be back with you again tomorrow for the Thursday edition of the show. Inaid Wad will be coming on later tonight for Wednesday Nights with Inaid Wadi. That's 7 to 9 p.m. Roundtable discussions, robust debates that are being had on that show. So it's one that you don't want to miss. Otherwise, for myself, Salailo Makudir, and everyone that made today's edition a possibility, it's bye for now. Shap, shap.